Hello and welcome to another episode of Statford Bridge Chelsea by the Numbers. Today's number is 3 for Chelsea 3, Wolverhampton 1. Chelsea are back to winning ways. Their first win in 5 matches prior to this. I believe if they had not won, it would have been the longest winless streak in like 20 years or something insane. Chelsea were pretty good in this game. They weren't great. I think it is very important to note that they were not great. But they won 3-1. They played basically a 3-1 XG game. And we'll talk a little bit about how they got there. But playing like a not amazing team, it was pretty good. I thought the first 30 minutes of the game, it's Chelsea 11 shots to 1. It's 0.9 XG to 0.07. I think 1 XG to 0.07. Chelsea are up 1-0. And then they have that 15-minute period that's just been happening all the time. And Wolves get a shot here, a shot there. They outshoot Chelsea 4-1 in those last 15 minutes. They score off of a pretty bad Rob Sanchez error. And we go into halftime. And it's tense of, are we going to see the same? Is Maresca going to make subs? Is the team going to run out of gas? We've seen this one before. And the thing that I think is really interesting about this one is I don't think Chelsea were that good in the second half. But if you look at the XG distribution of the whole game, right? It's a 3.2 to 0.8 or 3.1 to 0.8, depending how you look at it, based on the rebounds, right? It's 1 to 0.5 at halftime. The second half, you see 2.3 to 0.3, and you're like, oh my God, this is a beatdown. Of that 2.3, 1 comes from Nani Madueke. So now it's 1.3 to 0.3, which is still good. And 0.9 comes to Cucurella. So now it's 0.4 to 0.3, aside from 2 moments. And I think a thing that worked out very well for Chelsea in this game is that their set pieces, their attacking set pieces, were very, very, very good. The first goal comes from an outswinger. Chelsea played outswinging crosses the whole game. It was clearly something they had targeted. They've been very heavy on inswingers. They went for outswingers in this game. And they got a number of very high-quality chances out of it. You see the first goal is a corner that's delivered. Reece James is kind of set up perfectly on the edge of the box for the likely knockdown locations for an outswinging cross. This was a thing that Liverpool used to do, was they would research, if we play an in-swinger versus an outswinger into this location, where is the most likely place for it to get cleared? Let's put our guys outside the box there. And if you look at Chelsea's corners in this game, Reece James and Cole Palmer are on the edge of the box in the 2 most likely places for outswinging corners to get cleared. And we see a second phase goal in the first half. And then in the second half, we have a wide free kick that's basically on the corner flag. And you see a truly excellent pick at the back post from Kieran Dewsbury-Hall for Tosin Adarabioyo. And one of the things that I really appreciate about set pieces is that they can dig you out of awkward situations. Marc Cucurella scores in the 60th minute. I thought before Marc Cucurella scored that Chelsea had been very poor in the second half. Not a set piece goal. It comes from a cross. We'll talk about it on the tactics board. But it is one of those things. The Madueke goal, which is him just poaching it off of Chaloba's header, is another one. Like, it's a great chance. It's a surefire goal, but it's a really, really well designed set piece. A great pick on a zonal marker to free a center back to go up and get there. And Chalobah does his job. So I think, like, let's not get carried away. You're playing 17th at home. You should be winning, and you should be winning by more than 1. But Chelsea should be winning a lot of times, and they don't. I think there's 2 things that are particularly interesting. The first is the Cucurella goal, because now we've seen this trend from Chelsea a few times. We saw it against Brentford, who also played a back 5, and now we saw it against Wolves, who played a back 5. We didn't really see it against Fulham, but those 2 stand out significantly, where in wide areas we get to a winger and you see a heavy emphasis on back post deliveries. And one of the things I tweeted in the first half was, if you're going to do that, which I actually quite like, right? I think there's a reticence to crossing against back fives because they can load the numbers. But the thing with back fives is the spacing is kind of wonky. And so it's very easy, or it's easier to get runners into good spots. But the other thing is it's much easier for you to collect second balls and to sustain pressure that way. But what we saw Chelsea do a not great job of in the first half and then do an excellent job of in the second half is Nani Madueke has a tremendous amount of dribbling gravity, right? And so gravity, if you think from an NBA perspective, it's how much you draw players to you off of the ball or on the ball, but how much you existing as a player brings defenders near you to give other people space. And what we saw with the goal is that Nani had a horrible day as a dribbler. He was wildly ineffective. He really was not able to generate a tremendous amount of high quality box entries or shots out of it. He took 6 shots. I think 4 of them were blocked. None of them were in good location other than his goal. But what we saw was that Wolves swapped their wingbacks to bring Semedo onto him and get Aït-Nouri out of there, which is smart. They brought Andre Trindade or João Gomez all the way over so that he doesn't have the ability to dribble inside. And they brought the wide center back so that if you beat him line, you have a defender right there to deal with it. And in the first half, what we saw a lot was Dewsbury Hall would come and try and connect, and James would come underneath, and Palmer would stay out. And now if you want to cross, it's only 3v3, which is okay. It's not awful, but it's only 3v3. What we see for the goal is that this switch happens so quickly that instead of Dewsbury Hall coming to connect and join, he actually spins out into the box. And now Igbadu has to be there to support, because if he doesn't, and he comes with Dewsbury Hall, who did not have a good game, Madueke just skins Semedo line, and it's a dangerous moment. So he stays. And what happens is now that Dewsbury Hall has come as the extra number, and the way I envisioned it for most of the game is that Palmer would be the extra the number, and it didn't happen. But Dewsbury Hall fills the lane between left center back and middle center back. Jackson fills the lane between middle center back and right center back. Cucurella fills the lane between left center or right center back and right wing back. And Neto fills the back post. And what happens is every single one of these players has a tough decision to make. Do I defend the guy in front of me or the guy behind me? And what we see is that Dewsbury Hall draws Bueno towards him because the delivery is short, and Dewsbury Hall is able to flick it on. And because it's short, the right center back gets very close to Jackson, and you end up with the wingback cannot get to Cucurella in time with Neto, and it falls to him and he scores. And being able to get lanes like this has been a very big Liverpool thing, where Liverpool have consistently done an excellent job of getting all 3 of the front 3 in there, and getting a midfielder in there, or getting a fullback in there, or whatever it is, of getting numbers in the box. Arsenal have also done an excellent job of this. And Man City historically have done an excellent job of this, of getting Gundogan into these spaces, or De Bruyne in these spaces. And it was a very nice thing to see, where it was like, okay, this is a deliberate idea to attack, to get the extra player on the last line, and create a 2v1 somewhere in the box. And if the ball falls there, you're going to get an amazing chance out of it. And it only happened one time. There were a ton in the first half that are almost moments. But I didn't hate it. I don't think crossing is amazing, but I think it was a good solution in the moment, and I hope we see more of it sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. I thought that was particularly interesting about the game. Aside from that, I don't think there's a ton to talk about. Wolves are not that good. Chelsea are quite good. I think maybe the most interesting thing is Trevoh Chalobah played left center back. Levi Colwill is out. Sounds like he'll be fine for City, and was very, very, very good. And the rest of the team was just okay or not great. Reece James was quite good. Tosin I thought was okay. I thought Caicedo didn't have a good game. Dewsbury Hall is not at the level. Nani and Neto were not very good. Palmer looked flat. And Jackson, I thought, had a bit of a stinky one. And Chelsea were still pretty comfortable. And this is why I've found it difficult to get too up in the air about this last kind of stretch, is that Chelsea, even while playing poorly, have been quite good. And so if we look at the spreadsheet, compare year over year, Chelsea are something like a 0.8 on penalty expected goal team. That's really good. That's way better than they were last year. Again, we're back up to a 2/3 of an expected goal difference. The expected goals for are up. The expected goals against are down. I think very clearly now they have found in the last 4 games some non-Wesley Fofana defensive solutions, I think. The shot volume is way up. The shot volume against is way down. The box touches are way up. The box touches against are way down. Like, again, I'm saying the things I was saying 6 weeks ago. Like, this is fine. Now, unfortunately, you did not pick up as many points as you really needed to in that 5-game stretch. Like, 3 from 15 is tough. You can imagine worlds where if we talk about kind of the guess for the season was that 70 points, like if you look at the bar up here, right? If you look at the bar, that number is 70 points is the target for Champions League, and I think that will still be enough. Is Chelsea need to put up 30 points in their last 16 games. So that can be 10 wins. It could be 9 wins and 3 draws. It could be 8 wins and 6 draws. But you got to put up 30 points. That's the number, right? So when you look at that stretch of 3 and 15 and you say, okay, you have to put up 30 points to get there, like, well, wow, imagine you put up 9 out of 15 points or 10 out of 15 points. So now you only need 24 or 21 or 22 points left. And it's like, yeah, Chelsea are going to pick up 21 points in 16 games. No problem. No questions asked. But you look at the remaining fixtures and it's like Chelsea plays City away. They play West. They play a lot of the teams towards the bottom of the table at home. So teams like West Ham, Southampton, Leicester, Spurs, Ipswich, Everton, United, like these are all teams in the bottom third of the table, which is pretty wild that Spurs and United are there. But you play all those teams at home, and you got some tough away games. City, Brighton, Villa, Arsenal. You've got Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Forest away, Fulham away. Like, it's not an easy schedule the rest of the way. By winning percentage, I think it's, like, actually not that bad because weirdly the games that Chelsea have played twice, having Bournemouth and Palace in there, who are both decent, means that it's not the hardest schedule. But I think the home away split is tough. And we can kind of look at the big picture stats stuff, like on expected goal difference, Chelsea are 4th, but Chelsea are something like -4 on penalties, and Bournemouth, who are level with them, are Chelsea are -3 on penalties, and Bournemouth are +6. That's a 9 penalty swing. That's something like 7 expected goal difference. So, like, if you neutralize everybody there, it's, I don't know, like Bournemouth are considerably worse than Chelsea on that metric. But Chelsea are in the same spot as Arsenal-ish. They're a little bit better than Newcastle. They're a little bit better than City by these things. Liverpool are miles away, the best team in the league. And that's good. If we look at Understat, a different provider by non-penalty expected goal difference, Chelsea are by comfortably the 3rd best team in the league. There's a gap between them and City. If we look at the McClockbot stuff, like if we look at the rolling expected goal difference, Chelsea did legitimately have a blip, and then they go right back to being quite good again. So I'll be pretty curious to see how the next couple games go. And like we've talked about Forest a little bit, and like Forest are not real. They're good. They're a legit good team, but they're scoring their first shot every single game they play. And like to come from this set of games with these XG performances, with the amount of points they've put up, is remarkably improbable. And so then you see, okay, they play Bournemouth, then they play Brighton, then they play Fulham, then they play Newcastle, then they play Arsenal, then they play City. Like, you look at that run, if you told me that they lose all 6 of those games, it's totally believable. I don't think it's super likely, but I'd say it's equally as likely that they'd lost all 6 of these games. So it's a weird one where, like, I think people are getting very hung up on that sort of thing. Chelsea are something like 45% to make top 4 by up the analyst. The betting markets still have them at north of 60%, which I think is much more accurate. I'm still not particularly worried about top 4, top 5, whatever it is. I think when you look at the probability that if you think for Chelsea to come out of the top 5, right? For Chelsea to come out of the top 5, that means that 3 of Arsenal, Forest, City, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Villa, Brighton, however you want to do it, that means 4 of them came ahead of Chelsea to come outside of the top 5. And like, there's just no way. I think it's remarkably improbable. So let's see. I also thought Chelsea were probably going to put up 12 points in the stretch that they put up 3, and I thought this was going to be done and not even a conversation. I thought we'd be talking about like the starters playing Conference League games by the end of it. It has not gone that way, but that's where we are. And I think kind of looking at it now where we're like 60% of the way through, Chelsea have played like 30-ish games in all competitions, which is like a real sample size. There's a lot to like, man. The team takes really high quality shots. They get a ton of XG because they also take a ton of shots. This was a thing that I flagged up really early in the season as a big point of concern, that I thought the shot volume was really low. And I said, let's see for the season, can we get north of 15? They're north of 15. I looked at the shots conceded last year was a big problem. Chelsea gave up way too many shots last year. It was like 15. Now it's down to like 10, 11. You are starting every game up 0.5 when you start with a 5-shot difference. If you are a 5-shot difference team, you are immediately starting up half a goal, which is just such a huge benefit to the team. And again, there's other things I like. The set pieces last year were minus 0.08. This year we're plus 0.02. Again, over the whole course of a season, that is something like 4 goals. It's awesome. And that this has slowly ticked up over time. That's awesome. And I think actually I was kind of looking into it, like Dimitri's set piece XG, like what he is considering a set piece, is much tighter than other people's models. Like Opta, for example, called the goal against the Jackson chance against Bournemouth, which was like second phase off a corner, the huge XG chance at the back post. They called that a set piece because it's a second phase of a corner. I think that's a bit generous, but if you include things like that, this number is even higher. So it's really positive, I think. In general, I'm pretty happy with the way the team is playing on the pitch as I look ahead to Manchester City, which is where we're going to finish this conversation. Chelsea play Man City next weekend. And we don't normally do preview episodes, but City is a big game. And it's a big game not only for the season, right? Like Chelsea only took 1 point in this game last year. If you lose, it's not a big deal. If you draw, it's the same as last year, whatever. But I think as good as I think Chelsea are, which is quite good, I think they are lacking a statement win. Not a statement performance. There are games they have played well. I thought the draw versus Arsenal, Chelsea were quite good. I thought the Liverpool game, they were quite good. I think even the City first game of the season, they were quite good. But I don't think they have that like oomph win yet. Like the win where you're like, oh wow, okay, like they're for real. And if this match was happening a month ago, we'd be like, oh yeah, Chelsea are gonna kill City. But I think Chelsea had their little dip. City have refreshed, gotten some bodies back. I think being able to play much more real midfields of Kovacic, Gundogan, and De Bruyne has helped. And particularly, the thing that stands out the most to me is that, again, whatever about some of the opponents in this game, is that they've shifted Foden back wide and Kevin De Bruyne central, and that has been tremendous in terms of their shot creation. Like 3 to 0.5 and you win 6-0, and like the goals are like Mateo Kovacic is scoring in this game, but they created really, really high quality chances with a solid shot differential and and all those things against Brentford. They were like good until they melt down at the end. The West Ham game and the Leicester game, they created a bunch in both games, and a lot of that is back to Kevin De Bruyne. And this brings the interesting dilemma for Chelsea in that Chelsea are very limited in their midfield selections right now. Romeo Lavia is going to be out. His injury is described as worse than Enzo, and Enzo has been described as a few weeks by Argentine media. And so you go into this game, and if you say Caicedo obviously starts, who went down with a kind of nasty tackle, and it's like, oh my God, if he goes down, Chelsea are actually screwed. You have Caicedo, and you have Palmer, and then it's like, okay, who's the third midfielder? Is it Dewsbury Hall again? Because I don't know how I feel about that. Is it João Felix? Don't love that either. Mark Cucurella finished the last 15 minutes of the game in midfield against Wolves. I don't think that's a solution. And you get to a place where, okay, like if they're not back tomorrow, what's your midfield selections here? Who you got here? And I think this ultimately gets us to the point of, much like Trev, I think there would be a lot of utility in recalling Andre Santos. A lot of people are talking about Leslie because he's been quite good for Southampton lately. I think you're probably better off sending him to Strasbourg or leaving him at Southampton. Whereas I think Andre is good now, and Strasbourg are they drew second in the table Marseille. That's a very solid result. They've drawn both games against Marseille now. Andre Santos had a lovely assist to like slip through ball for Amiga. I think in terms of the relative utility of Andre Santos versus Leslie, I think Andre Santos is very useful. And in terms of Andre Santos versus staying at Strasbourg, Chelsea have 16 league games left. They have at least one FA Cup game left. And they have a guaranteed 2 more Conference League games. So at minimum, even if you're like, well, he can't play in the league, there's 3 games there. Strasbourg are still in one of the cups, and they still have their league games. They don't have any European games. And you would expect that Chelsea are not only going to play 2 more Conference League. You would expect 6, 7, 8. So you get to a place where, like, okay, there's going to be 10 90s for him, even if he doesn't play in the league or he plays sparingly in the league. And I think getting him to settle in England, giving you the body to sub more, and cover for Lavia, who's never fit, and giving you cover for Enzo and all those things, I think there's a lot of value in bringing him back here, and very, very little downside, both for the club and for the player. Because you have enough secondary games that even if it's like a Cassidy loan situation last year, right? Where Cassidy returned in January and then didn't play at all, there's a lot of games here. The reason Cassidy didn't play is because it was basically only Carabao Cup semifinal and final, and then FA Cup games. So he played the FA Cup games and nothing else. And I don't think that's the case for Andre. So I would bring Andre back. Anyways, that's going to be the whole pod today. If you're liking the pod, like, subscribe, share, retweet, all those things. We we will probably be live for City. We'll probably do a little watch along because that one's on Peacock. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know. But as always, enjoy the soccer.